2,506 felons voted illegally in Georgia. 66,248 underage and therefore ineligible people to illegally register to vote before their 17th birthday, when the law requires 17 and a half years old. At least 2,423 individuals to vote who were not listed as registered. 1,043 individuals to cast ballots who had illegally registered to vote using a post office box. 4,926 individuals voted in Georgia who had registered to vote after their Georgia voter registration date, thereby canceling their Georgia voter registration. 10,315 or more individuals to vote who are deceased by the time of the election. 395 individuals to vote in Georgia who had cast ballots in another state, which is illegal in both states. 15,700 individuals to vote in Georgia who had filed a national change of address with the United States Postal Service prior to November 3rd, 2020. 40,279 individuals to vote who had moved across county lines at least 30 days prior to Election Day and who had failed to properly re-register to vote in their new county after moving, also in violation of Georgia law.
Welcome live from our nation's capital. You're in the war room. It's Saturday, the 5th of December, the year of our Lord 2020. Stephen K. Bannon here. We're going to go right to, we got a packed show today for our country and getting into the details of where we stand right now and stopping one of the biggest tragedies in American history, the stealing of a presidential election. Knowing how guilty and how caught the Biden operation is, they're announcing now that they're not going to even have an inauguration. What they're saying is they're going to have something like their virtual convention. And here's the reason. They know nobody showed up to vote for them, so they know nobody would show up to the inauguration, right? They've been caught red-handed, and that's why we go back and continue to play this segment from the lawyer, Mr. Smith, in Georgia for the Trump campaign. Now I want to bring in Michael Patrick Leahy from the Georgia Star. This is the paper that was started by Michael Patrick Leahy and John Fredericks. Leahy is an entrepreneur that's done started papers from Tennessee to Ohio to Michigan to Minnesota, places that are battleground states, to get the truth about MAGA out to the people. So, Brother Leahy, you have done incredible amount of work in looking at the details of this, and I want to go through because now we're getting into the details, whether it's in Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin. The evidence is overwhelming, and it's becoming more overwhelming every day. I want to specifically focus on Georgia, and particularly what Mr. Smith said right there. Can you walk us through your assessment of where we stand with proving that?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very compelling case made by the Trump Campaign Council. But it fails to include perhaps an even more significant problem area. And that's the following. There is, in essence, no chain of custody for about 500,000 or more of the 1.3 million absentee ballots that were cast in the state of Georgia out of a total of 5 million. Because about half the people in the state, by our estimates, voted absentee through drop boxes, and about half via mail. By the way, we asked the Secretary of State's office if they could tell us how many absentee ballots were cast by being placed in drop boxes and how many by mail. They didn't know. They told us to go talk to the counties. Well, we talked to the counties. A few of the smaller counties have provided what they're supposed to, the chain of custody reports, call it a ballot transfer form. Every time an absentee ballot is picked up from, there were 400 drop boxes in the state. Some counties had 37, like Fulton County, metropolitan Atlanta. Some just had one, as in Cook County. So in Cook County, they provided us a complete list of the transfer forms. But get this, DeKalb County has said they told us yesterday at Georgia Star News. You can read it at Georgia Star News right now. They cannot find the chain of custody records for absentee ballots deposited in Dropbox. Here's the exact quote from the county attorney letter to us. Quote, "It has not been determined if responsive records to your request exist." This is a month after the election, and the county of DeKalb County cannot find the ballot transfer forms they're required by law to keep, so that we have a chain of custody, so we know that probably, tens of thousands of the 350,000 votes there, probably if they're like Cobb County, 50,000 or more, were transferred from ballot drop boxes, there are about 33 in DeKalb County, to election offices. There is no chain of custody for those, Steve. No one knows right now if somebody, picked up ballot transfer boxes on one, took them somewhere, sorted them out, threw out all the Trump votes, and then delivered the next day just Biden votes. No one knows yet, and that should be public information. They're withholding that right now.
But hang on, this is what I don't get, and what the audience doesn't get is how do you? They certified this election, right? How did they already certify this how did they certify this without the basic requirements of that?
Well, there's no way they could know if those were valid or not. There's no way they could know. So they basically, took these counties on faith and did not do basic auditing and monitoring techniques that anybody with any common sense who's ever been in business, who's ever had a business that's been subjected to an audit would have undertaken.
Well, so they certified this because you've got this arrogant Republican Secretary of State, Raffensperger, and you've got his sidekick, Gabe Sterling, who goes out of his way. Sterling goes out of his way to kind of disparage anything to do with the voters of Georgia and the Trump campaign trying to get to the truth. By the way, I think also on your site, a news story breaking this morning, 58% of the people of Georgia, 58% want a special session called to get to the bottom of this. But why does it take Michael Patrick Leahy in the Georgia Star to get on top of this? You got the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, you got all the major papers, you've got the state apparatus itself, and now we're finding out a massive new piece of information. There's no chain of custody for what could be, 500,000, 600,000 votes at minimum?
I think so. I think it's probably about that many. And, of course, from our research, now, let me say something nice about the registrar at Cobb County. We did a story at the Georgia Star News yesterday and said, they did have the ballot transfer forms, but they didn't know when they'd be able to get them to us. We wrote that story, and then magically, about 10:05 yesterday, they submitted all of those ballot transfer forms to us. And we know in Cobb County, 89,000 Dropbox absentee ballots were counted, 59,000 mail-in absentee ballots were counted out of 380,000 total votes. So about 38% of the votes were absentee ballots, 23% from drop boxes, 15% from mail-in absentee ballots. Now, we've just done a preliminary review of those ballot transfer forms from Cobb County, and I can tell you there are some things that are alarming. Number one, there is at least one ballot transfer form from Election Day where an individual picked up about 113 absentee ballots from a particular drop box in Cobb County. They signed that they picked it up, and there's no signature from the registrar or their designee at the election office of receiving it. So that's obviously a violation of the election code rules set out, or the election rules set out by the Secretary of State, number one. But number two, we also looked at on Election Day, there were two collection team members with the same last name who started at 7 a.m., got about 2,000 or 3,000 ballots from 10 drop boxes, but didn't deliver them until 1 p.m. to election offices. So these are things that are, I think, troublesome. But credit to Cobb County, they produced those transfer forms.
Okay, your 12,000. There's only 12,000 vote difference in Georgia. They keep doing these recounts, and I say, why are you doing these recounts when you don't get to the bottom of the signatures, or you get to the bottom of this? There's no need just recounting bad ballots, right? Or ballots that should be thrown out. Well, this is so. This whole issue with drop boxes. This is all part of this hidden consent, wasn't it? That Stacey Abrams negotiated with these weak-kneed Republicans that nobody knew about. That Lynn Woods, he's in federal court suing right now to get this overturned. But this consent decree, why does nobody go back to the railhead of this? Of what the problem is? You've got a consent decree that allows all these funky rules that are kind of made up as you go along.
Well, it's interesting, Steve, to look at the origins of this problem. The consent decree signed in March 2020 actually dealt with just two things. One having to do with the cure period, reducing it from 3 days to 1 day. So that's not a big deal. But the other part of it, which is very, very troublesome, is that it included an agreement by the Secretary of State to change the signature verification process in a way that made it much easier to commit fraud on absentee ballots. Interestingly enough, that change was not conducted in an open meeting of the state election board, where they're supposed to meet and pass these rules in a vote. Instead, that change that made it easier to commit fraud on absentee ballot signatures was initiated through what's called an official election bulletin just from the Secretary of State. Part of the reason, I think, for that is because if they had held an election board meeting, that would have been public and minutes would have been taken. So Republicans didn't know about this, many of them, until after the November 3rd election.
Why would the Secretary of State? Why would he agree to do that? Why would he agree to do something with Stacey Abrams and not inform, not go through standard procedures, and inform everybody?
Well, that's a very good question, one that the Secretary of State does not appear to be eager to answer. If things became worse, though, Steve, on this, absentee ballot drop box are not authorized under Georgia statutes.
Exactly.
There's no law that authorizes drop boxes. There was an emergency rule passed by the state election board in July that authorized them. And then subsequently, another emergency rule, wait for this, passed in August by the state election board, allowed for absentee ballot applications to be submitted and approved without having the actual signature of the voter.
Michael,
is a huge problem.
Hang on for a second. I'm going to take a short commercial break. I'm going to come back on the other side. We get more questions to this. Jack Posobiec's going to join us. We've got the lawyer Thomas King, the second from Pennsylvania, just filed the huge lawsuit for the plaintiffs, citizens of the Commonwealth, including one of the plaintiffs is the truck driver with the missing 144,000 ballots. Mayor Giuliani, a lot to go here. We're going to take a short break. Michael Patrick Leahy from Georgia will join us on the other side of the commercial break.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back. We're live from Washington, D.C. want to get right to it with Michael Patrick Leahy. We've got a jam show today on a Saturday. The president goes to Valdosta, Georgia tonight to a huge rally. Going to be very, very dramatic and a very big inflection point in this entire operation. We're going to talk to Posobiec in a minute about some polling that's going on down in Georgia. So, Leahy, go back over that. Talk about they agreed to what on the signatures?
Well, in the consent decree signed in March 2020 between the Secretary of State on the one hand, and the Democratic Party of Georgia, the Secretary of State agreed to send out an official election bulletin changing the signature verification process on absentee ballots, made it much more onerous to reject ballots, and made it much easier for a potentially fraudulent absentee ballot to be accepted and counted. And very specifically, what happened in this, the way they changed the signature verification procedure. Under the law that currently exists, under the law, the registrar or the designee who reviews the signature on the exterior envelope in which the absentee ballot is contained has the opportunity to signature. They look against first the application signature and the registration signature. If either of those don't match, that sole registrar or designee can reject the absentee ballot. But Secretary of State Raffensperger changed that procedure dramatically with this official election bulletin, changed the law in effect. Now, if a registrar sees an absentee ballot envelope with a signature that they think is odd, they cannot reject it if either the application signature or the registration matches, right? Now, if both of them don't match, they still can't reject it. They have to convene a panel of 3 registrar designees.
Unbelievable.
And if the majority of them agree, they can reject it. But all those who want to reject it have to sign their name under the rejection on the envelope. As a result, as we've talked about, in 2016, the rejection rate for absentee ballots was 3.1%. But in 2020 in Georgia, that was 0.15%
Exactly, and you had millions, and you got millions of these instead of tens of thousands. So this was
you got 1.3 million versus 280,000.
This is
exactly.
This is a complete scam. Complete scam. Cleta Mitchell's put in the new lawsuit. To go back up to what Smith said at the beginning, you've been all over this. That's now going to be in the courts. But you're breaking news on Georgia Star this morning. A John McLaughlin poll shows that, was it 58% of Georgians now want or demanding a special session be called to get to the bottom of all this. They want to really take it out of the courts and have the where it should be, have the state assembly get on top of this and figure this thing out about where these electoral votes should go.
Exactly. And we just broke that news, exclusively provided to Georgia Star News on the web at georgiastarnews.com. Headline, the John McLaughlin poll reveals 58% of registered and likely voters in Georgia want Georgia Governor Kemp to call a special legislation session of the Georgia General Assembly to address this absentee ballot signature verification problem that was created by the Secretary of State.
Well, maybe they'll get to the rest of these issues, too, of the illegal alien votes, of the underage votes, of the felon votes, of the people moved out of state. It's outrageous. It's 100,000 votes, even besides the signatures. Leahy, we got to jump. You're doing an amazing job down there. Part of the reason we have 58% of Georgians is because of the John Fredericks Radio Network and Leahy's Georgia Star. People are finally getting the truth. And even Democrats, working-class Democrats, want to figure out what's going on down there. 58% hate. I would say that's basically what Trump got. When you really count the real vote, is going to come close to what Trump got, is the 58%. 58% of the people in Georgia want a special session called to get to the bottom of this nonsense. And it's a disgrace. These cowards, like the Secretary of State and the governor, agreed to all this and now are in hiding. The reason they don't want any of this to come forward is it's going to open up about what they agreed to, what they shouldn't have done. They should have been very open about this. They try to do it in the dark at night because they get intimidated by the media. They get intimidated by the Democrats, and they fold. And now they're folding again. And this is why the Georgia Star and John Fredericks Radio and this audience is so important. You're seeing the shift going on right now. 58% of the people in Georgia want a special session. Leahy, how do people get access to you on social media, and how they get access to the Georgia Star.
Get access to the Georgia Star News. Just go to georgiastarnews.com. It's one of 6 state-based sites that we operate. Of course, the flagship is the Tennessee Star, TennesseeStar.com, and then I'm on the social media at Michael P. Leahy, MichaelPleahy on Twitter.
Leahy, you're a real warrior. Thank you for joining us this morning on the War Room.
Steve, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thanks, brother. For our audience out there, the reason we're going to win is we got guys like Leahy. These are grinders. These are not show horses. These are workhorses. They are deep into the details here. Okay, so it's hold the line. The reason you hold the line is that every day more and more evidence comes up of how Biden, the Democrats, their Wall Street cronies, the CCP, all of it, have worked together to try to steal this election. And more evidence is going to come out every day. Later in the show, we're going to have a white paper that was done by the Thomas More Society, Mark Solano on, one of the communications director. The white paper that says, hey, don't think the safe harbor in the 8th is driven into a stake in the ground. Don't think the 14th actually has to happen. This is, according to the Constitution, and they'll walk you through this white paper, these dates can all be moved to get to the bottom of what happened here on this theft of a presidential election. 58% of the people of Georgia want a special session. I hope and I pray today that the President of the United States has a private conversation, one-on-one conversation with Kemp to put forward his concern that this is not being looked at enough in Georgia. You got to call a special session. And it's not about Trump. It's not about the Trump movement. It's not about the Trump voters. It's about a free and fair election. It's about the Constitution. I want to bring in now Jack Posobiec from One America News, who's, I think, doing the best coverage of anybody out there. Jack, thank you for joining us on War Room Pandemic.
Hey, Steve, thanks for having me on. As you know, it's been kind of a whirlwind week for me, but that doesn't mean I haven't been plugged in. And actually, I've been kind of remotely conducting some interviews and digging into some of this stuff. I actually was able to interview both of the whistleblowers, the USPS contract truck drivers this week, and I spoke to them directly at length about their stories, what they saw both in Pennsylvania and in Wisconsin. And I think what's coming out and what's going to come out as we scrape deeper and pull these threads, like you said, it's working this day to day. It's a grind. You have to work these issues. You're not going to get this handed to you in your lap. It is not go. Do you people think that they are just going to let you take your country back? Do you think they're just going to hand the keys over to you? No, you've got to work at it.
I think that reminds me of my, excuse me, my CPAC speech.
I am cribbing you a little bit there.
Back in 2007, I've got it. Yeah, exactly. Homage. Also, for our audience that doesn't know it, Jack Posobiec and his wife had a baby this week. So Posobiec, as a true naval officer, was doing double, triple duty at the hospital with his wife and newborn baby, and of course, continued to report. Jack, I want to go. You're the first.
Army grows.
You're the first one, I think, that went into the crosstabs of the Trafalgar on the buried lead. The Trafalgar did an analysis of the Senate race in the state of mind of people in Georgia. I thought the big news from the McLaughlin poll was 58% of Georgians want a special session, and they want it now to get to the bottom of all these problems, particularly the signature issue that was hidden from them. But you've got a bigger reveal, I think, coming out of the Trafalgar poll.
Well, I would say that these two findings brace each other, and it speaks to the efficacy of Trafalgar and McLaughlin, because now you've got here in Trafalgar, you dig deeper below that, and yeah, they have that really interesting top line. It says Loeffler's doing a little bit better than Perdue, but it's neck and neck on both races. But you dig deeper, and it says 53% of all voters in Georgia, all voters, not Republican, not Democrat, all voters believe that the presidential elections in Georgia 2020 were compromised enough to change the outcome. 53%. They want to tell you that they're trying to say that that's a minority position. They're trying to say that, oh, you're just 15%, 20%. You're just the people that are hanging out on the internet in the slums of the internet ghetto. You're not in the majority. The majority movement. No, the majority says this election was compromised.
53. Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. If you can just stay over, Jack. This is the power of what John Fredericks is doing down there, the Georgia Star, War Room, others. For our audience, remember, you're at the vanguard of leading the American people to understand the American people are fair and decent people. When they see this thing was fixed in the level, because all they're told by the mainstream media is this is all baseless. This is baseless. This is Trump and his crazies. This is Trump's coup. Nothing could be further from the truth. And every day the truth comes out, the American people are on our side. 53% in Georgia. Okay, we take a short commercial break. We're in return. Jack Posobiec. We also got Thomas King III, the lawyer that's dropped the big lawsuit now in Pennsylvania. We're going to return in a moment on War Room.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. We're getting ready for the big presidential rally in Valdosta, Georgia tonight. We'll have we'll have John Fredericks on later in the show. Rudy Giuliani, Raheem Kassam, everybody talking about this and getting set for it. Big day today in Georgia. Jack, you see the litany. You saw Cleta's Mitchell's lawsuit. You saw Smith going through this whole litany of stuff. Do you think, without calling a special session, given the evidence that's coming up, that we can win this in the courts, or you think we're going to need a special session by Governor Kemp?
Well, I think what they need to have is that special session. And it really comes down to this, is unless you can find some judges who have the moral temerity to stand up for the rule of law, to stand up and say they know what was done here, they know what happened. I want to look for those champions. I want to look for those heroes. I do believe they're there. We found one or two in Pennsylvania, but we know that that's not always the case. And the founding fathers knew that. That is why. Remember, Steve, let's take this back. The founding fathers told us that the backstop of elections in the United States was state legislatures. That is specifically what they set up. That is what is in the Constitution. It is our system. It is our legal system. The founding fathers knew that it wasn't the jurisprudence that was going to get us through this. It was the legislators, the representatives of the people. Our founding fathers said, take it to the legislature. That's where this should go.
Well, the pressure is going to continue to mount. Now that 53% of Georgians understand that this thing was fixed. 53% now understand that the fix was in, and there was enough problems and issues in Georgia that flipped the presidential election. 58% are saying they want a special session called. So you're seeing a ground, and we're going to only add to it every day as we continue to hammer this. Let's go to Wisconsin and Michigan before we get to Pennsylvania. Jack, on your analysis of what's happening there.
Well, the huge news, and we can break some news out of Wisconsin, is that we just talked about the legislature. We're finally seeing the legislature in Wisconsin step up. So next week, December 11th, right there in the Assembly Committee on Campaigns and Elections at Room 412 East, the Wisconsin State Capitol, right there in Madison, Majority Leader Jim Steineke and Speaker Robin Vos of the Republican Party in Wisconsin will be holding a public hearing on the 2020 presidential election. They have finally stepped up because
huge news.
I'm guessing,
Yep.
I don't have the numbers for Wisconsin, but something tells me that they're seeing similar numbers to what they're seeing in Georgia, with these 50% plus of all voters saying, hey, you got a problem with this election. And when 50%, and look, Steve, you know these politicians, I know these politicians, When 50% plus one of the entire population of the state tells them they got a problem, that's when they know they have to get into work. Okay. You never see politicians move this fast unless there is a problem. What they see is a problem. And losing all public, but this election has no credibility. This election has no credibility. And because elections are about the consent of the governed. And if 50% plus one says this has no credibility, you do not have consent of the governed. Period. End of story.
This dovetails the great lawsuit that's going through that Reince Priebus and the guys are working on. They've got a schedule now. I think they deliver their briefing on Monday. The Biden campaign's got till Wednesday. Dual briefs on Thursday. The judge says they're going to rule on Friday. And they're prepared. Both sides can have plenty of time to go to the Supreme Court after that. That lawsuit talks about the 221,000 illegal ballots from both the IC, the indefinitely confined, and also this nonsense they pulled on early voting. We got them dead to rights in Wisconsin. We've been saying this for weeks, and you're absolutely correct. This is the thing for the audience. This is the impact you, the audience, are having, because now it's shifting in the states. You see it in Georgia and you see it in Wisconsin. When the state leaders get involved, it's because they're seeing the math change underneath their feet, right? That people are saying, hey, something's wrong here, and we need it vetted. Also in Michigan, didn't we get we've got the ability, I think, in Atrium County or in Anthem County to get the 21 of the machines? What happened there? A judge ruled we can actually seize these Dominion voting systems and get into them?
Yeah, remember, Steve, Antrim County, that's the specific county that actually had, what was it? I'd have to look up the numbers, but I think it's
6,000.
I wanted to say it's not 600, 6,000. How do you lose 6,000 votes in the wrong direction? They say, oh, it was a switch.
A glitch, yeah.
Who threw the switch?
Exactly.
That's what I want to know. Who threw that switch?
Trust me,
who programmed that glitch?
It's a feature, not a bug. Trust me.
Feature, not a bug. Yeah. Look, when you've got 6,000 votes going in one direction, and look, I sympathize with people. We don't know how these programs work, and here's the problem: is that these machine operators, the companies, won't let you see how the election worked. They won't let it be audited. If you won't let it be audited, how do you not throw that out? How do you know what's on the machine if you won't let it be audited? Simple as that.
And the excuse that these
I can understand why a judge has to rule in that case.
And
they have to.
The excuse that these states are arguing is that you would get into the proprietary software and the proprietary code of their vendor. Well, yeah, that's the purpose of it. We got to get into that code and check it out. Sorry about the vendor.
And hey, you know what? I say fine. I say, if you want to keep your code, you can keep your code, but I'm sorry, we're going to have to throw out your election. Okay. And it's as simple as that. If we can't audit this, we have to throw it out.
I've got Thomas King III we're going to go to in a minute, but I want to talk about his lawsuit. You actually interviewed the truck driver. Tell me about Pennsylvania. You're a Pennsylvania guy. It really started the explosion here. The Gettysburg hearings really took us to the next level, right? Of course, the state legislature punted. Although last night Cutler came out and sent a letter to saying, hey, the congressional delegation on January 6th should object to the seating of these electors. And you inform me that's just punting. But there's a lot going on in Pennsylvania. This new lawsuit by the Amistad Project representing these plaintiffs is very powerful. We got Thomas King III. The lawyer is going to walk us to it in a second. But you've actually interviewed the truck driver. Why don't you tell us about what you know about Pennsylvania?
Well, Steve, I've been saying two lines all election. Number one is that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. That's what I say about Georgia in terms of voting in the Senate and elections and fighting for stopping the steal at the presidential level. Second is that Pennsylvania is the key. Steve, I talked to these truck drivers. The one guy one in Pennsylvania, one from Wisconsin. The one in Pennsylvania, Steve, he said he didn't even vote. He said, he didn't have time to vote. He wasn't inclined to do so. But he said, you know what? I respect the sacred nature of this process, the sanctity of the vote. He said, it's all we have. It's all. And this was this guy. He's a Buffalo Bills fan. He's driving a truck from Long Island down to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, down to Harrisburg. And he says, the right to vote is all we have. It's all that sets us apart as Americans. And you could tell that it it struck him as an American that he was proud because he thought that he was helping and aiding the political process, the election process. He was honored to be a part of that process. And when he realized what was done may have been done in the shadows, may have had a problem, may have been something that wasn't supposed to be done. You could see within him that moral disgust that he had, that he felt that he had done something wrong, obviously unwittingly, but he wanted to clear his conscience and he wanted to get right. He wanted to get it right. And this is a guy who's been open about having some challenges in the past, and he's done what he's done. He's paid his debt to society, and you could tell very clearly that that's what was going on here, that he did not want to be involved in any of this. This is a reformed man. It's a reformed man who wants to do the right thing for his country. Simple as that. And very quickly,
Go ahead.
Yeah, but no, I was going to say the money line really, though, that I got was the driver from Wisconsin. And, he's telling the similar story about ballots going missing and then being found later. And he mentions, he goes, well, I didn't vote by mail. I said, how'd you vote? Hey, well, I voted in person. And I said, why didn't you vote by mail? He said, I work in the mail. I would never vote by mail.
That's the money line. Real quickly, just summarize the truck driver, because his presentation wasn't as succinct as I think people wanted it. Just in like a minute and a half, what is he saying? What is he saying actually happened?
So Jesse Morgan, the main guy who everyone's talking about, picks up this huge load in Long Island, New York, of ballots. One set. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands. These are tall pallets, he said. He says, you take him to Lancaster and Harrisburg. All right, roger that. He's taking him down. He said, and it struck him, he said, why am I picking up ballots in New York that are going all the way to Pennsylvania, Harrisburg and Lancaster? But he's like, you know what? Part of the process, I'm just doing my part. So he's trucking along, right? Literally. And when he gets to Lancaster, they say, oh, no, he gets to Harrisburg first. And he says, no, these aren't for here. You need to take them all to Lancaster. So they start changing his route, and they won't give him the bill of lading. They won't give him the slip. They won't give him any paperwork that backs up what they're saying. But he's saying that he's got the supervisor, this post office supervisor, coming out and telling him this stuff. So he takes the load to Lancaster. But at that point, he hits, drivers have their hours. So he's now hit his max hours, so he can't drive anymore. Offloads the trailer in Lancaster, leaves it there, comes back the next morning, it's gone. It's gone, and all the ballots are gone. And to this day, he has no idea what happened to that trailer, what happened to those ballots, and he didn't even have the paperwork for it.
I'm so glad that bars decided that there's nothing to see here, and there's no need to check in anything. Okay, Jack, before we lose you, give us a summary, particularly about in Georgia tonight. How important is this rally as we work through this weekend? This next week's going to be one of the most intense weeks in American political history. What's your assessment of where we stand right now with turning this around and claiming Trump's victory?
I have a feeling that, and if we know anything about Donald Trump, is that he's going down there. Sure, he's going down there ostensibly to campaign for Perdue and Loeffler, but when you get Donald J. Trump behind a microphone, and this is the first time since the election that he has gone in front of the deplorables, something tells me he's not only going to be talking about the Senate races down there in Georgia.
Yeah,
he's going down to Georgia to right the wrongs. He is going down to be with the people, and he is going to send a message not only to the people, but to the people that have been stealing this thing, that have been breaking the laws, that have been caught on tape, that have been claiming there's leaky pipes and sending election observers home. And he's going to send a message, I think, to the world tonight.
Jack Posobiec, congratulations. The whole live stream and hashtag War on Pandemic is united in saying congratulations on the new baby. The best to your wife. You're a true warrior.
Thank you so much, guys. Merry Christmas, too.
Okay, brother. See you. Jack Posobiec from One American News, one of the best correspondents out there all over the story. We're going to return another hero coming forward, Thomas King III. He's the lawyer at this new lawsuit that's being dropped in Pennsylvania that gets down to the bottom line. Talks about this driver and a lot of other stuff. Get to Thomas King III next.
We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP. They have all lied for too long. We will end what they do wrong.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. We're going to go to Pennsylvania. Thomas King III, General Counsel of the Republican Party up there, and also part of the Amistad Project. He's the lead attorney in this suit that was filed. So, Thomas, we had you on to break the news last night, kind of hurried. Want to take a few minutes to go through this. Walk us through the lawsuit. Why did you guys bring it now, and what's the basis of it?
Well, thanks, Steve. The gist of this lawsuit is that the governor's been in a big hurry up here. We have a tyrant by the name of Tom Wolf, who's the governor of Pennsylvania. He's been in a big rush to certify the election. He's working in cahoots with the Commonwealth, which would be the equivalent of our Secretary of State. Her name is Kathy Bachwar. She's hooked up with an organization that donates to Rock the Vote. They let Rock the Vote come in and actually access the election system in Pennsylvania. So they're tied. They can register people directly onto the state system in Pennsylvania. It's outrageous. So this lawsuit is an attempt on our part to stop the certification of this election by Wolf, and also to undo the certification that he's given to the 18 Democrat electors in Pennsylvania. So we sued the governor, the Secretary of the Commonwealth, and all 18 of their delegates to the Electoral College. We're asking a court to mandamus him, or to order him to reverse himself with regard to the certification of this election. There is absolutely no way that the governor is in a position in this state to certify this election with everything that's going on, including, and Jack gave a wonderful summary of the testimony of the truck driver, and that I know for a fact that matter is under investigation by various agencies. This driver testified that he hauled in probably upwards of 200,000 ballots into Pennsylvania from Bethpage, New York, on Long Island. These ballots should have never been there. Why they were there is anyone's guess. But the whole thing fits together, Steve, real nicely. We've set it out in the lawsuit. The real the culprits here are David Plouffe and Mark Zuckerberg, and the Amistad Project and the Thomas More Society, thankfully, have devoted just tremendous efforts here. I'm really proud to be part of that with Phil Klein and the Got Freedom folks. And so all of this ties together because the money's coming from Zuckerberg. The money to pay the ballot counters, the money to pay the judges of elections in Philadelphia was paid for by Mark Zuckerberg. How'd you like to live in a state, Steve, where the people counting the votes in Philadelphia are being paid by Mark Zuckerberg? And that's the truth. We got that in documents that were supplied in Judge Braun's courtroom in the federal court in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. So that's what this lawsuit's about, is to stop this and to stop these people from voting Pennsylvania's electoral votes in the Electoral College. We're filed in the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. We've had a couple excellent decisions out of judges in that Commonwealth Court. We're asking for an injunction, and we hope to be successful in stopping this charade of a certification in Pennsylvania. There are hundreds of thousands of votes at stake in Pennsylvania, including whatever in the world these ballots were that were hauled in from Long Island, New York by this very brave truck driver, Mr. Morgan, who put himself at great risk, came forward and did the right thing. Jack gave the right analysis. Morgan is a hero. Morgan is a guy who's telling the truth. You can't fool with Morgan. When you listen to Morgan, he's not going to put up with anybody's nonsense. he knew there was something wrong. They made him sit in a postal facility for 6 hours without unloading him in Harrisburg and sent him to Lancaster with these ballots. The trailer that he used for several weeks before all of a sudden disappears with the ballots on board. So where those ballots ended up is anybody's guess. But remember, in our state, Zuckerberg gave $10 million to Philadelphia. He gave $2 million to Delaware County and money to Montgomery County. And with it, they bought these drop boxes. The greatest part of these drop boxes is there's no security. You could drop whatever you want in these drop boxes because, especially in the really great story is in Delaware County, where they had half the drop boxes in the whole state of Pennsylvania with Zuckerberg money bought in Delaware County. These boxes are supposed to be have video security. The great part is the video security they bought was run on solar power, so it didn't work at night. So there's no nighttime video. There's no security. I had to actually intervene for some people in a group called the Watchdogs in Delaware. I had to intervene because the election official called the police and wanted the police to arrest the people in the Watchdogs who were trailing the people who were collecting the ballots. And I had to actually get on the phone very late at night and intervene with the police and tell them that it would not be a good idea to try to arrest or stop the Watchdogs because I've represented police departments in court, and I would not be representing them, and they'd be in a lot of trouble if they interfered with these people carrying out their constitutional right to follow the ballots. So that's kind of the overview, Steve, of where we are. We've got a really bad system in Pennsylvania. We've got a broken system in Pennsylvania. We've got some heroes in Pennsylvania like Congressman Mike Kelly, who you know, and State Representative Daryl Metcalf and Russ Diamond. These guys are warriors up here. They're calling for the legislature they're calling for the governor to convene the legislature because it went out of session November 30 and it doesn't go back till January. So they're calling upon him to call for a special session of the legislature, which he undoubtedly will not do. But if he doesn't do that, they're also trying to garner a majority of members in each of the House and Senate, both of which are controlled by Republicans, to call for a special session, which is another provision in our state constitution. So these guys are warriors. They're on it, Steve.
Thomas,
they're backing the president.
Thomas, can you hang on for 1 second? I want to take a short commercial break. We've got Rudy Giuliani who's going to join us next, but I got to finish with you. So if you could just hang on over the break, we're going to return with Thomas King III. We've also got, up in Pennsylvania, we've also got the one and only Rudy Giuliani, the president's lead lawyer in all this. Brian Kennedy next hour, Raheem Kassam next hour, Mark Serrano next hour from the Thomas More Project on this white paper talking about the timing of all this. Maybe 14 December is not locked in stone. New paper that talks about maybe different timing. We're trying to give you signal here, not noise. Okay. Big hour next hour. Hang with us. We're going to come back with Thomas King III, the lead attorney on this blockbuster lawsuit that just got dropped in Pennsylvania.